All right. Joe Skibby with Beets, Beds, and Browns. Welcome to our Season 7 interview with Steve Pops of Pops Microgreens. We are successfully unmuted, unlike our last two interviews, so thank you for bearing with us. StreamYard changed the way that they interface, but we're happy to see you. And if it's your first time visiting Beets, Beds, and Browns, we're an ag advocacy podcast, and we interview emerging hip-hop artists, garden interests from homestead to commercial ag, and craft whiskey distillers. And our mission is to get people to grow their own food and celebrate while we do it. If you're unfamiliar, beetsbedsbrowns.com. You can register for our 100K in 10 years initiative, which is to distribute free seed kits to 100,000 people in the next 10 years. We'll mail you a seed kit. You can select from 4 or 5 different lettuce, dill, corn, a couple other things that we have, and we'll ship that anywhere in the contiguous 48. Without further ado, tonight we're talking with a grower who's proving that you don't need acres of land to make a major impact. Steve Pops, founder of Pops Greens in DeMott, Indiana, has built a business around one of the fastest growing sectors in fresh produce, microgreens. Pops Greens specializes in locally grown, fresh-cut microgreens like broccoli, sunflower, pea shoots, purple radish, and custom salad blends, supplying customers with nutrient-dense greens harvested just days after germination. What started as a passion for growing has become a mission to connect people with healthier food while showing that small-scale agriculture can create big opportunities. Whether you're a backyard gardener, aspiring urban farmer, or just someone trying to eat a little healthier, Steve Journey offers lessons on entrepreneurship, consistency, and growing with purpose. Let's bring Steve to the stage.
All right. Thanks for that intro.
Thank you for your time, man. We really appreciate it. And we're going to start the way we do with every interview is the question of where you've been, where you at, and where you going.
Yeah, I love it, man. So, haven't always been into, the gardening, farming thing, right? So my real, job, I guess, is kind of in corporate America. I work for a software company in like the training industry, but I'm very blessed to work at home for most of my career, right? So that, kind of allows for passion projects to pop up. And, so Pops Greens is definitely one of those passion projects. And, where we were at for it, really just like most people, and kind of like the point of this, the show, is trying to figure out, with my wife and I, how to have healthy choices for our kids to eat, right? And especially during COVID, really just relying on, these food sources. We don't know where they're coming from, like, things from, just grocery stores, big, just we don't really want to try to have something high quality and consistent for our kids, right? So I started looking into microgreens and started growing them for ourselves. And little by little, just from our own personal consumption, we're like, hey, you can turn this into a business, right? Start talking to different people, and it's got a really small footprint. And then got into like the vertical farming thing as well, which is definitely from a kind of concentrated urban perspective, a really great way to grow high quality produce in small space. So combine all those things together, and we've been in business for I think just over 4 years now, and have a lot of different restaurants and just opportunities and customers in Northwest Indiana. So it's been a good ride so far.
That's incredible, and I'm continually shocked when I hear about the opportunities in microgreens farming, and in particular, the nutrient density of the seedling. Do you call them seedlings? I mean, is that the correct term? Or
yeah, I mean they're basically seedlings. So pretty much with microgreens, you have a harvest time for most of them within like 10 days, and so the quick turnaround for variety. I think I have like 30 different varieties I grow. Unless they're herbs, if they're herbs and basil, things like that, it's about 30 days. But you can grow a ton of food in like 1 or 2 weeks. It's shocking. When I first got into this, it's a lot of trial and error at first, just like everything. But then you get your first successful crop, and it's like, this is like 3 pounds of food, And so it's like, wow, just for one little shelf with a couple of lights on it, right? And so, those greens, after you clip them right before like their true leaves come. So they are seedlings. They're different than sprouts. And so people kind of confuse microgreens and sprouts, but greens actually grow in soil. They actually, are germinated under light, and then they pack a punch. And so once you kind of harvest them, I think one of the studies for broccoli is one of the most like nutrient dense. It said it has like 20 to 30 times the nutrient potency than like the actual crop, vegetable itself. It's crazy.
Which is, yeah, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
The declining nutrient density in store-bought grocery. So you're already dealing with the floret of broccoli that is less than the seedling. Yeah. And you're growing a whole plate of seedling. I mean, 3 pounds of little sprouts seems intense, right? It's like, what's that? 3 pounds of bricks or 3 pounds of flowers? Right. Behind a green. So you had to master the growing side of things, right? That's step one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now what do I do with it?
Right. And actually that was kind of, getting into the selling part of it. Cause it's like, okay, we started off with like this little like 3 shelf, grow system, right? And then you use these flat trays to grow them, and one tray produces almost like a pound. And so unknowingly, after you set that up, I'm like, I have like 12 pounds of food here. Like, we can't eat all this, right? It's like, wow.
You get down,
it's like I cut that down and and give it to friends and all that stuff. And then you start going to restaurants and all that, and they, it's really an easy sell. So like, wow, you actually sell those and grow them, like that's great. We'll try them out. Because really in our area, it's like, there's decent amount of growers, right? But there's a huge opportunity, for anyone really to get into it and kind of start marketing to their hometown restaurants and things like that, and start something from little, right? You need a ton of investment to grow into something larger. So really, that was really it over the first year or so, and it was really just walking in and say with a bunch of samples and say, hey, I'm in business. I grow these. What do you guys think? And like, yeah, I'll try them out, and they're all excited about it. So,
is there a particular type of restaurant that goes after green? I mean, craft brew pub or high end restaurant, or did everybody get in on this?
Yeah, I mean, usually around our area, it's mostly like higher end or like craft. It depends on the chefs, honestly. So some chefs, if they're if they were in like a higher end area, as early in their career and they started a restaurant or working there, then, they're loving it, right? And they'll use it for garnish. I have some chefs even that like the flavors of different greens. So like, for instance, like cilantro, you try like a tiny bit and it's like an explosion, right? The flavor's super concentrated. So it actually concocts some really cool like dishes, using different flavors of greens to really just make a pop, and they use it for their specials and things like that.
Yeah,
so it's like really neat to see.
Nutrient punch as well as a flavor punch too. I've had the broccoli, the basil, the cilantro. It is it's almost, you could very easily overwhelm somebody with too much of it, right?
Very much so.
Very flavorful.
Yeah, very much so. There's even some like really neat ones that I grew that were used for like bar drinks. And so like nasturtiums, those are edible flowers. We can actually like use them. Yeah, it's like peppery, kind of licoricey a little bit, and it's got a really funky taste. But they had a bartender, got a bunch of them, and he just made these specials for. It was kind of like a fall drink, and I think it was mixed with bourbon actually. And so tried it, and I'm like, it's interesting. Interesting. So I'll have to find the recipe and send it to you.
So we'll make that and sample it for you for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to try it, right? So yeah, so it's been a neat ride so far, and and of course, being able to just have like food right there at the ready. I know exactly how it's grown. I know exactly what I use for it. It's all organic materials, and just seeing like my almost 2-year-old like eat it, right? That's great.
No concern, right? Yeah, you're not worried
absolutely,
about right? Everything in the cupboard. And
yeah, for sure, right? So yeah.
Cool. So what equipment got you started? You mentioned kind of low barriers to entry, and anybody can do this. I know I've seen some pretty complex setups with shelving units and
For
high-end
sure.
LED lights and watering pumps and coco coir. Is that the right?
Yeah. No, honestly, I mean, it is way easier, to kind of start with. I mean, the most important thing and the lesson that I took a while to learn, and just like in gardening in general, is soil, right? So high quality soil matters. And, I tried using all different types and, kind of experimented. But like a commercial grade soil is, you go to Menards or Home Depot or something and buy like a Pro Mix. So that's like your number one. And then to set up, really, you need trays. So kind of like your 10-inch by 20-inch gardening trays, or you can use. I actually have a cousin who's in Guatemala who wanted to do microgreens for his family, and he just went to a local store and bought like a cake pan, And so like really, it'll grow on anything. It doesn't matter, but you take that tray, tamp it down, and make the soil really flat, and then the seeding. Your seeds are obviously the second thing. And you can go online. There's a bunch of different stores where you can buy like bulk seeds, and they're pretty reasonable. And you kind of just densely sprinkle it across that tray and water them. In a couple of days, they'll sprout. And then the last thing really you need is just like a light. So even if you put it next to your window, that'll work. But even just stop light, just turn it, whatever. But
and do you need a fan? Like, does it get long enough to where you worry about legginess or?
Yeah, a fan helps, if you're growing in volume. But, for anyone that, really the other passionate thing is I think everybody should do this. It's such a low barrier to entry to being able to like grow have your own food source. And, if you have like one or two trays to start with, just an open air room is good enough, right? If you have a couple, like 10 trays, 20 trays, whatever the volume of that, then a good, fan, you're going to need that to try to keep the aeration, because the one thing you have to fight against with greens, because they're so dense, is mold. So, heat, low air, flow, and then that high density, it's really easy to get moldy trays and all that stuff. And then you got to throw everything out.
Start over, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you need dirt, a fan, a watering source, and then now you end up with a moldy tray. Like, what are some other challenges? Mold, insects, bacteria, anything pop up or?
No, man. I mean, because it's a controlled environment, and so so if you're really like growing in your kitchen or like a bedroom or something like that, I mean, you're not going to have the same elements that you have outside, right? So like you don't have to worry about bugs eating your crop, really, right? Or like aphids infesting it. I mean, because it's just inside. And so from an insect perspective, you just have to worry about like maybe fruit flies, right? If you have flies in the house, and then just like anything, right? That's just like
you transplant a plant from outside into a pot, and all of a sudden you got fruit flies, and
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a glorified house plant, right? And so like if you keep a house plant alive, like, you should be good with the greens.
So do you ever, like, we're big on seed saving, and that's where we give away most of our seeds. So, I know you mentioned that was kind of a nominal cost of entry, but could you let these, I mean, they're just a regular seed. You're just harvesting it early, right? So you could let it go to seed and potentially create it's your own source of seed, correct?
Yeah. You definitely could. I mean, honestly, it's any seeds, right? And so, if you know how to take a plant to seed, sunflower is a great example, right? Sunflowers produce a ton of seeds. If you plant them outside, and you have, like 10 or 20 sunflower plants, and you dry them out, there you go, right? And yeah, right. And you have something to do with them. And surprisingly, that was when I started growing. That's one of the most shocking things is like, wow, you can actually eat these sunflowers, like, and they taste like a sunflower seed. It's crazy. It's a little.
Yeah, if you read sunflower butter, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so it's like, okay, and that's sunflower is another super popular because it's actually also a good protein source. Sunflower and peas. So I grow a lot of those as well. And so, yeah. So yeah, you could definitely reuse your seeds. depending on how good you are at letting stuff grow to seeds and harvesting them and all that fun stuff. But you do need a lot of seeds, though. So it is a high seed consumption business. When you grow these trays.
Yeah, if you think of some of these seeds are the size of a pencil dot, and you have to fill a 10-inch by 20 tray overflowing, right?
Yeah.
I've seen them grow. I've seen the seeds spread. So, you may have covered this, but tell me again, what made you choose microgreens instead of a traditional vegetable farm? Was it strictly space, or were there ever concerns?
When we first started, we were living in Florida at the time, and we didn't have space. We didn't have really big outdoor space. That was kind of how it was out there, and being able just to, I love growing outside. I love flowers and plants. I've always had gardens and stuff like that, and so it was like a natural thing to just try it out. And I'm like, oh, cool! Like I can still grow this inside, and for the amount of space that you need and the volume that it produces, it's I just kind of ran with it, right? And so you only need a tiny footprint to really produce a lot, compared to if you're outdoors in your garden. You can do a lot with gardening as well in a small space, but also it takes time. And it depends on the yields and all that stuff. So I kind of balance it out. I still have a garden, right? But it's not commercial. I don't use anything. I'm not a commercial farm for that. But I have a garden for my family, of course.
Now, can you register a farm and not be outside?
Yeah, we're a registered farm, and so
that opens you up to USDA grant funding and other benefits.
That's correct.
Department of Agriculture.
Yep. And also, it's interesting too because there's a niche, because we're considered like a vertical farm, or indoor urban farm. So there's a different avenue, that we can pursue with that as well. If we expand and want to, funding or anything like that. So
there's literally there's
yeah. So it's pretty it's a kind of an emerging area. So there's a lot of popularity with it. I mean, one of the big things that's really interesting is there's some bigger companies now that are starting to do like indoor like strawberry farming, and they just grow them inside, and the yields are like absolutely insane. And so
water consumption's down, light LEDs, and having sun and space on real land, and indoor farming is a fascinating subtopic. We haven't covered that.
It really is.
Somebody, anybody at Greens, please share. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested because, those big operations. What's cool too is you could totally make them like off the grid, and so there's some of them that have it's like a big warehouse, and they have like a they'll have solar for all their electric, right, and then they'll have a well for all the water and all that, and it's just totally they don't use insecticides, they don't need anything, right, and it's like completely self-contained. So
I always see the question of why does it cost more for food grown without chemicals?
That's a great,
we got to find a way to mass create healthful food, higher nutrition and chemical free.
Right? Tell me about it, but you got to pay for it, right? And so,
so what? I mean, it sounds very simple, and again, I'm sure in hindsight there's some challenges that you faced. Can you share what some of the obstacles were when you got this off the ground?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the biggest thing is kind of when you're just growing for yourself, figuring out, kind of the densities, what variety, needs this type of density, right? So finding that out and kind of honing it in for each different variety, that was tricky, right? And once you get a couple grows under your belt, then it's then it's like, okay, cool. I have have a hold on that. Then when the seasons change, surprisingly, your humidity is a big deal. And so, for instance, I was growing like crazy. I had tons of shelves. Right now, my capacity is about 300 trays a week, and so I have a room with shelves on each wall with lights and stuff like that. But back then, when we first started, it was kind of smaller. And we had it was growing no problem at all, and then all of a sudden the weather changed outside. It got cold, and this was November, and I could not grow anything. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is the weirdest thing in the world. Like, it's indoors, the humidity, the temperature was the same and all that, but the humidity like dropped. And actually, no, it increased. It increased in our space, and it was too humid. I didn't know that, and so everything started. It's called damping off, where basically it just like starts dying. It's not mold. It just starts like the roots die, and then they just topple over. And that happened for a good like 2 months, and I just racked my brain trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Like, what
And
changed?
you have orders and you have restaurants waiting.
Yeah, right. And so it's like, and that was earlier too. So it's like, you're afraid to do anything wrong, right? Because I just got this restaurant and I don't want to disappoint them, and and so that was an interesting one. I was just like, I don't know if I'm just keep doing this or not, but figured it out, right? Got a dehumidifier and kind of a temperature, a sensor and all that stuff. And zeroed
I picture
it in.
you like walking into one of those tech rooms where you have a full Tyvek suit on.
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean,
that's true. And that's the other thing. I mean, sometimes, if you get like a tray, you see just like mold on it. And it's not like bad. It's like mold you would find in your garden, right? Like the green.
Mycelium, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? So sometimes you see that and it's like, oh man, you don't want that to spread. So then it's like you just spend some time like just deep cleaning, right? Just wipe everything down and get that, and then it just clears itself up really quick.
Yeah, like you would your flats for the year, like a 10% mix. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should do, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. And but now and that's the other side. Is like a lesson learned is like kind of like farming hygiene, right? Where it's like if you actually do keep up with wiping stuff, consistently on a weekly basis, then you don't ever have problems. And so that was early on, and then you start employing that, and then it's like, okay, right? Then you don't worry about those things anymore. So really the biggest challenges I have now is kind of like almost like it's like consistency. So it's like, all right, you have your menu you send out every week, and just getting your orders in the best case is like, hey, I'm going to order exactly this, and this, and this every single week, and I'll let you know if that changes. Beautiful. I love it, right? And that's it's not always like that, right? It's yeah. But that's like any business.
Right? What's in season? What do we want to cycle through?
Yeah.
So,
but
go ahead.
I was to say the fun part of that though is like doing kind of seasonal stuff. And so now like going into fall, it's neat because I can kind of play off of like the fall menus for restaurants and their busy time. And so I'll start growing like really unique stuff. And so, there's a method where you can like grow yellow peas. And, I don't know if I have a picture of them, I'll send them, but basically you just don't expose them to light, and then they grow really long and they grow just yellow. And they're really sweet. They look really cool, and they're just perfect on all these like fall dishes.
Yeah.
And so then that and like corn, so sweet corn I grow in the fall too. That's a big popular one. And there's just these yellow leaves, like really long yellow, super sweet leaves, and it's super. You've never seen them before. They're so unique. And so it's fun to do that stuff.
Yeah, you'd always almost be like waiting, right? And why wait when it's so delicious? When it's just
that's true.
So going from a couple trays to 300 trays a week, what does your typical week look like? Knowing you're working from home, but you're still working a full-time job.
Yeah.
I mean, how many hours a week are you putting in at 300 trays?
It's a great question. I have luckily one of the other motivations of starting kind of turn this into something is to teach my kids, how to have a business. And so my two oldest, they're 11 and 8. And they help out a lot. And so, they'll help with, kind of planting the trays, putting the soil in, seeding them as well. And then really it just takes a lot off my plate, which is awesome. So really from my standpoint, just doing orders and doing deliveries, and then, being able to, kind of grow the business, I'm a little slow with it word by mouth or, spread by word of mouth, right? And as it grows more and more, get them more involved. And it's cool because, a couple of times I'll just take them with me and then we just cold call together. Right. And so it's teaching them all these skills of entrepreneurship.
Oh, yeah.
And then, once they start driving, like, hey guys, here's how to maintain the website and market, and they can take it over and run with it, as it grows. So that's really like the main passion. It's like it's truly a family thing, and just getting the kids involved and teaching them these skills is so, so valuable, and it works really nice for me. So,
we're always talking about generational farms and their diminishing quality. So when you talk about a vertical urban garden indoor grow farm, what does Gen 2 look like?
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, right? I mean, what is it going to look like? They can take it as far as they want. I mean, number one, it's teaching them how to like sustain for themselves. I mean, that's the best thing. Like, hey, you don't need to depend on a grocery store. Like, you can seriously just, plant this, and a week later feed your entire family and know exactly what it is. And so even if they don't, do anything with it, if they know how to have that, those skills for themselves, that's a huge win. And then on the business side of it, they can together just keep growing it within, we're in a bunch of different things. We're a vendor for Region Roots. That's another avenue that's growing. And within the area, it just keeps growing more and more. And then we can eventually kind of expand out, right? And so it just really, there's no limit on how big we can make it. It's kind of just taking it as far as it wants to go.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there with it. And so
it's always the red car philosophy, right? But I interviewed another microgreens grower, and I'm aware of you. And then we started doing a Whole Foods green powder, like an AG1 or Brickhouse Nutrition. And then it's like, wow, that's whole food, nutrient dense, et cetera. And then we hear microgreens are so much heavier in terms of nutrient density, and people are freeze drying the microgreens to make their greens powder. And it's like, talk about the value added product and things you can sell within the state lines with limited oversight.
Yep.
It's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, the freeze dryer, we were looking into that, and actually had a chef. So I work with the culinary school at Hammond Career Center.
Okay.
They're a part of ACA, the Association of Chefs. So they're awesome. And so he always throws me ideas. And he's like, yeah, have you ever had like the freeze dried or thought about freeze drying them? And I was thinking about buying a freeze dryer just to experiment with it. And I have a very good friend who works at a very large freeze drying company too. And so that could be something that, is an avenue. But freeze drying, the volume is like insane. I know for like
2 inches, or you need so much.
So because it shrinks so much, so you need like I forgot what the amount. I think it's like strawberries, for instance, like decrease like 10 times their volume when they're freeze dried.
So 3 pounds would be what, 3 ounces?
30 pounds or yeah. Or you need like 30 pounds of strawberry to make like 3 pounds. It's crazy. So
that's when what type of poundage is 300 trays coming up with? And is there varying densities between the individual plants, or at that?
Very much so. So it depends on the green, but like, so for some of the more hardy ones like sunflower and peas, they'll give me over an ounce or a pound a tray, and so it's pretty good. And then for like broccoli, and like broccoli and the brassicas and stuff, it's like 10 ounces per tray or so. And then some of your finer ones like beets, I'm looking at the beets right now. That's like 8 ounces or so, but still like half a pound to a pound a tray. That's almost, if I'm at full capacity, that's like 100 pounds, 150 pounds a week that you're pushing out, or every 14 days. So.
And is that where your demand's at? You're selling that much, or do you like keep a bunch at home to eat? Or
it's a mixture of them. It's a mixture, and so it comes in waves as well. So now we're busy in the summertime, and then all the restaurants, they have their summer menus and outside and stuff, and so we have we ship out quite a bit each week, and then for the fall, that's probably the busiest time. And then winter though has been starting to get steady too, just because there's not a lot of fresh produce, right? And so that's nice where it's just like, hey, you can make salads, you can do, all this other stuff, not just for garnish. And so, we're kind of just really just kind of getting steady throughout the year, which is nice.
That's great. Yeah, if you can get rid of those demand spikes.
Yeah.
What have the restaurant chefs taught you about growing, premium quality products, and how you approach them and selling it?
That's a good one. So they're they're hit or miss with like, pickiness, right? They definitely know what they want. And so they'll tell you. But a lot of the chefs, they're so approachable. And like, especially if they know you're a small business, like you're local, they're really supportive of, our local food systems. And that's what's been really cool about it. And, I'll give them, so like I'll make like a salad mix, right? And I hand mix all my, my combinations and all that, right? And so, I bring him a sample and he's like, oh, this is great. He's like, I'd like a little more red in it though to give it a pop. So I'm like, all right, sweet, right? So I grow some beets, I'll throw those in there, some amaranth, and I just make it, I think it looks beautiful. And then hand it to them and they're like, this is great, right? They'll use it. And so, so their feedback's really, really good. I haven't experienced, much where it's just like, one bad product and they're just done with you, right? And I know that's out there, right? But especially, we're competing with these huge distributors, and they get product from all over the world and it's perfect and all that stuff. But, if you take their feedback and apply it, then they're pretty loyal, which is awesome. And they're willing to help you as well. And so that's been really rewarding.
So what role does microgreens play in improving food access to underserved communities, right? We've talked about high-end restaurants. We've talked about growing your own. Like, could this be a solution to get fresh produce, which, again, food banks, food pantries, refrigeration, they don't have a ton of fresh produce.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing. We've sold to the food banks and, we participated through different programs for the food banks as well, which is great. And, one of the unique things about that was pretty cool is, the program was doing something kind of special, right? So, they were putting together like a salsa type of, like a package where you can do like guacamole and salsas and stuff like that, right? And I was able to grow a ton of cilantro to provide for that program, and just be a part of that experience. And it's just such a cool, way to contribute because, you might not have, if you need assistance or access, things like that, you might not be setting like different kinds of unique menus, right? And it's just a really neat way to provide, kind of a different experience for people that, that really appreciate that. And, so for the food banks in general, because of these volumes, and relatively, it's relatively low cost to grow these volumes for the most part. It's a great way just to be able to provide that. And I think food banks themselves, it would be an awesome opportunity for them to kind of have their own growing systems, and because again, it's low space, you don't need a ton of space, right? And it's low startup and a little bit goes a long way. And so if there's different, food systems that have the space to be able to do that, they can start it, right? And, so I think there's a big opportunity for that, if there's appetite for it, right, for them to maintain something like that. But, even within local communities outside of like the big food banks and things like that, I really think the barrier to entry to be able to provide kind of a, free access or low cost access to this fresh produce, year round is something that, communities could adopt. And, it's just knowledge and being able to do it and figure out, how to try it and things like that. I think it's just would grow in popularity for it.
There you go. Steve Pops, consultant to commercial growers throughout the not-for-profit.
Here to change the world, right? And so.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love that answer, and I love that there's a way to apply this knowledge, and especially the nutrition benefits to people who can be growing in their own home or can be looking in even in the community garden space. That's something we may have to look into and getting out and adding that to our slate.
Yeah.
What's something you wish someone had told you before you started growing commercially?
Ooh. Don't be afraid to just walk in somewhere and advocate for your business, and for what you do, right? And the owner of any business is the best salesperson, right? No matter what. And even if someone's busy and they don't want to talk right now or this and that, you still have something valuable to say, and you still have something that you put your sweat equity and your effort into, right? And you're passionate about. And you share that passion with whoever it is and show the value of what you provide. And it pays dividends, and so that's one thing, kind of getting into it, where it's like, if you drop off samples or anything like that, don't be afraid to just talk to the chef or talk to the assistant, sous chef or whatever it is, right? Or somebody owns another business or whatever, to share ideas with them, and that's the best thing. It's just networking and kind of spreading word of mouth, right? Because just off of word of mouth from indirect conversations, I've gotten so many different opportunities. People call me and say, "Hey, I heard about you through this and this and this. Could you bring over samples?" Okay, great, right? It's wonderful. And so, I love what this is and what we're doing, and I think everybody should do it, from a nutrition standpoint. And so it's a really neat passion of it. So I'm just kind of learning not to be afraid to talk about it to anybody and just share it.
Yeah, wave your flag, man. Share your good with the world.
That's right.
What about new crops, products, or partnerships you're excited about coming up?
Yeah, one thing I've been trying to get my hands on. So you get these really unique kind of like suggestions once in a while where I'm researching. I'm like, okay, can I grow that? Can I figure out how to do it, right? And there's this one that I tried before, and it's called green apple sorrel. And it's a sorrel variety, but man, you taste it and it's like a green apple, like biting into a sour green apple. It's crazy. And so I've been trying to hunt down, who the distributor is for the seeds and try to, so hopefully, pretty soon I'll be kind of adding that to the product line. And
is that like, to me, like I would just go on a web search, but I assume that there's like some hidden guy on a farm somewhere who's doing this offshoot. It's very challenging to find.
Yeah, for sure, right? Because you look and it's like, oh, cool, I'll find these somewhere, right? And it's just like you got to keep searching, and it's like, where the heck are these, right? And it's some random dude in Northern California that figured out how to
off grid with no farm and no
connection. So it's like, okay,
10 miles up in the mountains, you gotta try.
Right? Yeah. So if you ever see me on like a trek out to the Rockies or something, trying to find seeds for some random,
it's for green apple sorrel. Yeah,
that's right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So with that, and just just any the partnerships, Region Roots, they have awesome events coming up in the fall. I'm always excited to be there and just join other growers and things like that, and talk to customers and partners and all that. So the fall is a busy time, so we're getting kind of ramping up. It's hard to think that fall's right around the corner, but here we are.
Yeah, summer's upon us.
Yeah.
What's next for Pops?
So what is next for Pops? For us, we just want to keep making a difference, right? And keep growing with with the food hub, with with Region Roots, keep growing, with our restaurant base. I would love to have, open it up to just kind of like a CSA, right? For people who find the value of, greens, and they want that nutrition, to be able to make it easily and accessible for them. So we're looking at getting into more grocery stores in the area, especially some of the more like health food stores, and even some of like the health clinics that have like supplements and things like that as well, and see if they'd be interested in our different communities to have them. So it's just easier for anybody can, if you want to buy a big thing of sunflower because it adds protein to your diet, great, here it is. You can make smoothies, all that fun stuff with it. So really that's what we're looking into next, is kind of like the consumer side, and how to get, out of just the wholesale side. How do we get it out to anybody, where they can just have access to them if they're health conscious and things like that. And so
Awesome.
that's the next step.
Yeah, Steve, thank you for sharing your story and reminding us that growing food doesn't always require acres. It starts with knowledge, consistency, and a little bit of faith in a seed.
That's
We
right.
appreciate everything you're doing to help people connect with fresh food and local agriculture. And we can't wait to see what's next for Pops Greens. Why don't you share where people can tap in with you and how they find out more?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So popsgreens.com is our website. And so that's the first place, you can find us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X. So, all of our socials. So if anyone has questions or wants to reach out, go to the website. I have my number on there, email, there's a contact form, and just let me know. And I'll let you know, if anyone wants to order, it can go through the website as well. I appreciate it.
Incredible, man. Well, thank you for your time. I'm going to pull you into the green room. I'll finish the show, and then I'll cut it up with you for a couple minutes before we conclude for the evening. So thanks again for your time and your knowledge today, Steve.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right. That was Beets, Beds, and Browns with Steve Pops from Pops Greens, Microgreens. If you're interested in emerging hip-hop, garden interest from homestead to commercial ag, and bourbon whiskey distillers, you're in the right place. This is Beets, Beds, and Browns, and we're trying to get people to grow their own food through our hashtag 100K in 10 years initiative. I wish all of you happy planting. And if you're interested in growing your own food, beetsbedsbrowns.com, or visit Steve's at, get this right, popsgreens.com. Again, thank you, Steve, and thank you for joining us this evening.